Hey, this is Albee, Swenson, and we are beginning Bible Moms, Chapter 1, Eve. It's interesting for me to go back and go through this chapter because I'm in a much different situation than I was 9 years ago when I first published this. Back then I was a stay-at-home mom, and this summer I've been working a lot, and my husband's actually been able to take some vacation time, so he's been able to stay at home with the kids while I'm at work. When I was at home with the kids, I was really weighed down by the fact that I was taking care of the children and trying to run the house. You know, when your little children want to go outside and play, that means that you need to go outside and watch them. And more often than not, it seemed that I'd come in with kids that need baths and have dirty clothes, and they'd all be hungry, and I always seemed to feel like I was behind. The struggles and temptations that I had then are not exactly the same struggles and temptations I deal with now. Back then, I really was struggling with the idea of, well, I guess it's a form of self-righteousness. I thought that my strength, my wisdom, my energy was required to keep things going, when in truth, God is the sustainer of life. If He were to decide that it was time for any of my children to exit this world and go to heaven, it wouldn't have mattered if I was 10 feet or 10 inches from them. There's nothing that I could have done to keep that from happening. And yet somehow I thought that the whole house and my children revolved around me. Another struggle or temptation that I dealt with back then was sort of basing my identity and my self-worth on my performance. So for instance, if my house was clean and my kids were all eating a home-cooked meal, I felt like I was a fantastic mom and housewife. Whereas if the house was a mess and we were eating frozen pizza, I felt like a failure, even if I had legitimate reasons for not spending the day cooking and cleaning. I guess to some extent, that sort of performance-based identity is always going to be a temptation or a struggle, because the world seems to want to measure our success by its standards, when in truth, our identity has to be rooted in the fact that we are loved and forgiven children of God. The temptations that I'm more prone to deal with today are sort of trying to remember to be selfless instead of selfish when I get home from work. More often than not, when I get home, I really don't want to do anything but sit on the couch or zone out on the computer instead of helping with supper or putting on the mommy hat. So I need to work to sort of keep going, to finish my day strong, and to be what my family needs me to be at home. When I read this account of Eve, I was reminded how our job can really impact the house. Our role as a mother or a wife can affect everybody in the household. Our attitudes rub off on our husband and our children. And I don't know about you, but I want my family to have servant hearts and to be kind and compassionate and to glorify God with their thoughts, words, and actions. And that means that I need to model that first. That means I'm going to need to go back to the Word, because the Word is a fantastic attitude adjuster. I also noticed when I was looking through the study on Eve, how Satan uses the same temptations on us that he used on Eve. So for instance, not every day, but sometimes when I'm reading my Bible, I still find myself saying, did God really say that? Did He really mean that? Is that what He means for us to do? Same words that Satan used to Eve. Another temptation he used on her was trying to get her to want to be in the same position as God and to usurp God's authority. And you know, it's really easy for me to want to try to run the world and to try to have everything done my way. I'm very thankful that I'm not God, and I think the rest of the world is too, because God does a much better job of controlling things than I ever could. Anyway, this is just the beginning. There's lots more to dig into as you start the chapter of Eve. So God bless your study.